What's going on, YouTube? I'm out here fishing on a small lake right here at home. Today we're going to talk about the Ned Rig. I know it's nothing new. It's kind of starting to catch on pretty good. I got to be honest with you, when I first heard of the Ned Rig, I really wasn't that impressed by it. I really wasn't. I kind of discounted how good it would be, how powerful a tool it would be. And then after I started fishing it, I really learned that this is something pretty daggum special. So we're going to kind of walk you through how I like to use the Ned Rig. Ned Rig's very versatile. There's a lot of different languages you can speak to bass with a Ned Rig. Everybody's perspective on how to use it, when to use it, and why you should use it is totally different. And I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about how, when, why, and what I use on my Ned Rig and what I'm looking for. I'm out there shaking that little piece of plastic. So let's get out here and get to some of the details of it. One thing about this video, it definitely won't be long, and it definitely won't be very complicated, because there's not but a few pieces of technicalities when you're talking about a Ned Rig, and I love that about it. It's very simple. This is all the baits that I use when I'm talking about a Ned Rig here. I've got a few TRDs, ZMan TRDs. I've got a few what we call the Hula stick. I know the TRD is what's kind of mostly famous when you're talking about a Ned Rig, but I really gravitate towards this the Hula stick. The stick bait body, but it has the tentacles of a tube. It's a little bit bigger profile. Instead of being 2.5 inches long, it's probably 2 3/4. I got the Hula stick, then we got the TRD. Now I'm proud to tell you, this TRD right here is probably going to be my favorite for a while, because I named this color. This is called, can you read that right there? Yoga Pants. You know what Yoga Pants looks like? Yoga Pants, solid black. The rig's real simple. So you got a small piece of plastic. I use either the Hula stick or I'll use the TRD predominantly. Those are the two baits I'm going to use. There's a few other baits that ZMan makes that you can use. But to be honest with you, if you're not using ZMan plastic, I know this sounds like a sales pitch, but they just make the best Ned Rig bait there is. ZMan plastic floats. You're going to catch a lot of fish when you're fishing the Ned Rig. You're going to catch brim, bass, perch, fish you've never seen before. So you're going to go through a lot of plastics if you're using traditional plastic. Well, you know what ZMan plastic does. I don't have to explain that to you. It lasts forever. It's very rubbery. It's very soft, so when the fish bites it, they're going to hold on to it. And the other thing we can use, you know, here's my hook box. I'm just going to use a small jig head. This is a owner Ned Rig head that I'm using here. Probably my favorite. It's got a little bit longer hook shank in it. It's got a really good keeper. I've actually sawed off this keeper because I like to actually use super glue on the head of my baits to adhere them to my jig head so it doesn't slip down. But if you take a TRD or a Hula stick, you put a little super glue on the head of the jig head that you're using, that bait is going to last somewhere between a day and 7 years. Honestly, it's going to last a long time. So it's really that simple. I rig one up so you can see it here. So today I'm just going to use the little TRD here. I'm using just an unpainted, I think this is an 1/8 ounce Ned Rig head that I'm going to be using. And you know, we've got with ZMan, we've got the new Finesse bullets that you can use to use weightless. Typically I'm going to use it with the hook exposed. I really don't mind using it with the hook exposed. A lot of people ask me what size jig heads they need. You need them all. When you're fishing deep, you need heavy ones. When the wind is blowing, you need heavy ones. When you're fishing in current, you'll need lighter ones. You're going to need every single jig head size they got. So there's not a magic size for you fishing a Ned Rig. You're going to need every single one of them. So I'd suggest if you're going to get into Ned rigging, just go ahead and get you an entire box. Dedicate that entire tackle box to nothing but Ned Rig terminal tackle. You can see I've got everything from Finesse Shroomz heads to the owner style jig heads. I've got big ones, that's a 1/5 ounce or 1/6 ounce, all the way down to a 1/20 ounce. You need them all, you got to have them, just depending on how deep you're fishing and where the fish are located in the water column. But you can see ZMan plastic, it just does not come down. It's just, you know, and I don't have the right one. I'll put it on the actual Ned Rig or ZMan head, and you'll see this is a 1/20 ounce. But you'll see when you thread that elastic up on that hook, it's not coming down, folks. Like it's over. I like to grab it like a little kid. Take it behind the collar and pull it up and over that keeper, and dude, that thing is just there. It'll never come off. So that's it. That's all it is. So if you're like me, when you first look at the Ned Rig, I mean, that just really looks ridiculous. You're like, that's nothing that hasn't been done before. It's really small, kind of just not impressive at all. But that is the beauty behind the Ned Rig. It is very unintimidating. It's very palatable. You like that word I tried to use? I don't know if I can even say it right. Palatable to a bass. When a bass is kind of inactive, not really wanting to bite, or you know, sometimes they're just chilling. Fish don't have to eat all the time. That's when the Ned Rig shines. You can use this bait in and around structure, but where I think it really shines is where you don't have any structure at all. Is when the Ned Rig really shines. So I'm gonna get out here on this little small private lake. I'm sure you guys have seen me fishing in my tournament vlogs pretty much, at least 3 or 4 of them. I've caught fish on my Ned Rig. There's a lot of different baits and plastic that I use with them. TRD and the Hula stick are primarily my go-tos, but have you seen me use the Streakz video back this winter? You guys saw me fish this on Smith Lake on the FLW tour this year. A lot of my guide trips we pull out the Ned Rig. It's just a deal that just works all the time. So let's dig into it. You see what I'm using, what it is. It's really that simple, just a jig head and a small piece of plastic. I'll show you some of the stuff I like to fish it around. Alright, so let's talk about the setup here that we're going to use. I'm using the little 1/8 ounce. Traditionally I would use a little piece of super glue on this Ned Rig I got here, but I just don't have any super glue today. But just put a little dot of super glue on the head, you're golden. I'm using 9.2 pound test Seaguar Grand Max. Now this is probably on the upper end of fishing line. You guys don't have to use Grand Max. I would highly suggest like the Seaguar Finesse Fluorocarbon, Seaguar InvisX, Seaguar InbrazeX. I'm going to use anywhere between 6 and 10 pound test line. I'll go up as high as 10 pound test line, just depending on what I'm actually doing with my Ned Rig. I'm using braid to fluorocarbon. The reason I like to use braid to fluoro is I get a little bit better distance, increased sensitivity. I don't have to really set the hook. To me, it's just the way to go, but you're perfectly fine just using straight up fluorocarbon if you decide to do that as well. But I'm using 15 pound test tied with an Alberto knot at 9.2 Grand Max. As far as my rod and reel is concerned, you guys have seen me use this a bunch. This is my favorite jackhammer. This is a 7-foot medium action rod with a 2500 series MGX size 30 spinning reel. And that's it. So let's look at some of the things I like to fish out here when you're talking about where you're going to fish the Ned Rig at. I really like these little bare banks, these little flats like this. You'd be surprised how many fish, how much forage fish lives on these little places like this. You see I got a little bit of riprap in the distance there, and it's really simple. It's nothing special to it. Some guys say they fish it like a shaky head. I think you just kind of got to fish and just decide by the day what works the best. But I'll just cast it out towards the rocks there. You're going to have to decide, you know, depending on how deep it is or how windy it is on that particular day, or where the fish are located in the water column. That's how you'll decide what size jig head you're going to use. But I'm using just an 1/8 ounce here, which is on the big side when you're talking about a Ned Rig. It's such a small piece of plastic that you know, it doesn't take a lot of weight to get that piece of plastic down to the bottom. But typically I'm going to kind of let it stay closer to the bottom than I am to the top. And I just kind of like to make that thing act sort of like a crawfish. Another good way to fish the Ned Rig is for schooling fish. You know, a lot of people don't talk about fishing a Ned Rig for schooling fish, but it's excellent, especially in the fall, like where we're going into now. A lot of times fish are starting to feed on really tiny shad, and there's nothing better than a shad colored TRD to kind of throw and cascade in those schooling fish and catch some of those really finicky schoolers. I'll throw it out to whatever I'm fishing. Well, even if it's a bare bank like what I'm fishing now, I'll just kind of throw it out. Once I know it's on the bottom, I just kind of shake it, boop, boop, let it go back down to the bottom, just like a crawfish does. You know, when a crawfish moves, it just kind of moves really sudden and stops, really sudden and then stops, really sudden and stops. And that's really and truly what the Ned Rig is an imitation of. Is it can be a lot of different things. It's a really good imitator of shad, little small minnows, but it's a really good crawfish imitator because it's the exact same size as a crawfish. You know, a lot of times we use a jig to represent craw or some type of soft plastic. But if you ever had a bass spit up crawdads in your live well, you'll actually notice they're only 2.5 inches long, which is exactly how big a TRD or a Hula stick is. So I'll just kind of throw it out there and just kind of hop it along the bottom. And a lot of times as that bait's falling down to the bottom, that's when he'll grab it. This lake that we're fishing now, it's all largemouth, but I've caught a lot of spotted bass on lakes with that hook right there, that owner Ned Rig head. It works just fine, and you'll have no problems with it. It's kind of ironic that people kind of worry about the hookup ratio on the hook on a Ned Rig, but they don't mind throwing a drop shot hook. And this hook is quite honestly bigger than a drop shot hook, so you're going to be plenty fine with the size hook that's in the Ned Rig head. You see in front of me there's some riprap up here, and they, you know, riprap, you might hang up a lot when you're fishing riprap, but I can tell you that is one of the highest percentage places to fish the Ned Rig, simply because when you're talking about riprap, there's going to be all kind of little crevices and little minnows and little small panfish and brim that hang around there, and that's exactly what the Ned Rig imitates. So it's always going to be a good place for you to fish a Ned Rig as well. This is one of the places where a Ned Rig really shines. Ned Rig really is good because you can throw this thing up beside that hard structure. This is sort of just like you would fish a bridge piling or something, and I just throw it up there and just let it sink down. It's a good bait to use just to let cascade down through a school of fish or through a structure, or if you're fishing bridge pilings like I'm fishing right here. This is just like if you're on a big lake, it'd be just like fishing a bridge piling, but I like to just throw it out and really kind of just let the Ned Rig do its own thing. We're sitting in probably about 15 foot of water, and I don't really do a whole lot of work in the bait. I'll just kind of throw it out and just let the thing sink down, and every once in a while I'll just check it just to make sure he's not there. You know, one of the ways I've caught a lot of fish on my Ned Rig since I've started using it more and more every year I find a new way that I fish it. It makes it a little bit more interesting, but never discount how deep you can catch fish on a Ned Rig. You know, it's such a small bait, and a lot of times, especially in our lakes, when you're talking fishing 25-30 foot deep, I have to imagine it's really dark down there, so I like to use a bait a lot of times that moves some water. But with that being said, a lot of the fish that I caught this past winter, going into the fall, to this spring, a lot of them on a Ned Rig, on the Streakz, TRD, on the Hula sticks. Those are great baits for you guys to use out there at 25 to as deep as 55, 60 foot of water. Where I live, pretty much the depth range, the sweet spots from 25 to 45. I mean, occasionally you catch some 50 to 60 foot deep, but try it out there. Don't be scared to fish it out there deep. It's so small, it can be very intimidating to fish it deep because you think maybe the fish can't find it in deeper water, but I can promise you they definitely can find it, and it will catch some of those fish. It's a great bait to use on what I call alternative species bass. So spotted bass, your shoal bass, smallmouth bass, they're typically going to feed on smaller baits. And my thinking is the reason they like smaller baits, they have better eyes. They feed by eyesight a lot more. They're typically found in clearer water, and they like those small baits. And the Ned Rig is just a perfect one to use for them. So typically those fish are going to live a lot deeper. That's why it works in deeper water, because that's where those fish are anyway. So get out there, idle around. You can see that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm just idling around out here, just looking for some offshore structure. Spend some time with your graphs this summer or this fall. I promise you're going to find out that the Ned Rig is just as good deep as it is shallow. So there's no secret to it. There's not a secret color, not a secret bait. The biggest thing with that deal is the profile. There's days that I feel like the TRD outshines the Hula stick, even though the Hula stick's my favorite. And there's other days where maybe the Hula stick is better than the TRD. And there's definitely days where I've caught a lot more fish on the ZMan Streakz than I've caught on the other two. So just make sure you get out there, get you a really nice spinning outfit. If I could tell you anything that will help you be a better Ned Rig fisherman, is definitely make sure you have a nice spinning outfit. You're going to be typically using lighter lines, so if you got a good smooth drag, you got a good reel that doesn't twist your line, a nice rod that's really light, you're going to want to fish that more. It's going to make you a better finesse fisherman, which means you're going to catch more fish when you go to fish the Ned rig. So that's a little bit about the Ned rig. I know that's not a real highly detailed video. There's not a lot of twerks that I have about this bait. The biggest thing is putting your hands on it, casting it, using it, spending some time with it, and learning its capabilities, what works best and what doesn't work on your home body of water. So get out there and try the Ned rig. I'm going to leave some links in the description box on this video where you can buy some of this stuff at. Check it out. We put all the favorite baits, favorite colors, my favorite jig heads, my favorite line, rod, and reel. I'm going to put it in the link of this. I'm going to link it all in the description box of this video, so check it out. Hopefully it'll help you out.